Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. Senator Paul, God bless you for your opposition to this. You know, look, you think Steve Moore's crazy? I mean, the 2010 pay-go caps are still the law. They get avoided every year. You only need 41 Republicans because Democrats would need 60 votes to waive the caps. Why not try that instead of this crazy omnibus?
Well, I have bad news for you. The good news is I'm for it. I've tried it before. I've introduced it, and we've had the vote. The bad news is this, is that last time I tried it, there were 4 votes, me and 3 others. This brings upon us the lie that Republicans really are fiscally conservative. The Democrats aren't. They will not pretend to be fiscally conservative. Not one of them up here gives a darn about the debt. Republicans all profess to, but when you make them vote on the pay-go resolution, pay-as-you-go, that we can't have new spending without offsetting it, they always vote to exempt it. So the omnibus will be 3,000 pages. We'll get it 2 hours before they want to pass it. No one will read it. But hidden in the 3,000 pages will be, we're going to waive pay-go. So Steve Moore's right, it would take 41 votes. But the other thing is, 41 votes would stop the big spending. If 41 of us said no and held our ground until there was a compromise, we could force Democrats to reduce spending. We have completely and totally abdicated the power of the purse. Republicans are emasculated, they have no power, and they are unwilling to gain that power back. The only way they can get it, divide the spending into 12 bills and then decide to hold one of them hostage or 2 of them hostage, and then apply policy changes in the House. But they've got to do it. They've got to capture this, and we'd have to do the budget the way it's supposed to be. Budget, 12 appropriation bills, and then try to attach some policy like removing the 87,000 IRS agents from the IRS budget. When we try to do it in one bill, the Republicans don't have the intestinal fortitude. They always collapse, and they fear shutting government down, so no policy objectives ever get added. The only way we can do it is if we actually do what we're supposed to do: budget, 12 appropriation bills, and then decide which ones you want to fight over.
Regular order. Regular order.
Exactly.
That's all it takes. You're dead right, sir. And I'm just saying, you know, as a starter, the GOP, I mean, what do Republicans stand for? You know, this has something to do with the disappointing midterm election results. Are Republicans reliable? We need lower spending. We need less government. We need lower taxes and regulations. We need a growthier economy. You got Jay Powell in the Fed today, Senator, basically saying their restrictive policies are going to lead to recession next year. Fiscal policy, if it were growthier, it might ameliorate those, might stop the inflationary wave, might stop the Fed from printing money, et cetera, et cetera. Where is the GOP? Why is this so hard?
The other thing that people need to know is the pay-go may come up next week because it's a privilege motion. They can't stop it. It's a budgetary motion, and my understanding is that any one senator can bring that forward, so don't be surprised if you see that next week. But that's a good one to look at your Republican senator and see how they vote on the pay-go budget order. One other thing for your viewers, balancing the budget. How hard would it be if we passed 2019's budget, a budget from 3 or 4 years ago? If we pass that today, the budget would balance. That's how much spending has grown over the last 3 or 4 years. All the COVID spending is now built in. Nobody's going back towards the normal baseline. All that COVID spending's baked in, and we're bankrupting the country, and we're adding debt faster than we've ever added it in the history of the country.
You know, that's such a good point. Last night, Kevin McCarthy made a similar point, Senator. He said the COVID spending is now being translated into essentially mandatory spending. So it goes on forever. That's such an important point. It's another reason to stop this monstrosity. You know, I know you don't want to talk against colleagues. Dick Shelby is a conservative. He has a conservative record down through the years, but he's just part of this. Senator Leahy has always been a left-wing Democrat. I understand this. You know, that it's like the word pay for. The word pay for has become some kind of Middle English 16th century word that no one ever uses anymore and that no one understands. We pay for nothing in Washington, D.C.
Here's the interesting thing about it. 90 senators, Republican and Democrat, 90 out of 100 would probably tell you they hate the idea of an omnibus or a CR, and that we should budget and have 12 different appropriation bills, 90 out of 100. And yet in the last 40 years, it's happened a few times. So, but all it takes is 41 people to stand up, be men and women, and say, no more, we're not going to do it, we've had enough, we're mad as hell, the deficit's eating us alive, inflation's eating us alive, and we're not voting for an omnibus. If 41 people did that next week, we have the power. We already have the power. Don't do it, and then you go back to the negotiating table, and at the negotiating table, you make them trim some spending. But realize what the Republicans are saying privately, this is a huge win for them, because the Omni increases military spending $45 billion above whatever else they had already increased it. So now you know that the U.S. military will get more money than the next 10 countries combined, and it's got to have fiscally conservative parameters added to the military as well. It can't be a blank check as well.
You know, I tell you, I would take a government shutdown any day of the week, Senator. You know what else? I've kind of changed myself. I'm so frustrated over this. I don't know whether the debt limit is going to play into this or not, but if it meant paying interest on 10-year bonds 2 weeks late, if that meant pay-fors or pay-go or spending caps or regular order, I don't give a darn. I would delay the debt. I would shut the darn government down. You know, it doesn't shut down anyway.
Imagine what would happen. What do you think the markets would do if my shutdown prevention bill passed? My bill says that if you're at an impasse and you don't pass any new spending, you spend 99% of what you spent last year for 90 days. If you have no agreement, you spend 98% of what you spent last year. I think the markets would stand up and cheer and say, for once, we have some kind of fiscal sanity and rules in Washington.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. I think markets would like that. And by the way, you know, fiscal restraint, budget restraint will help the Fed. I mean, the Fed's crunching down on the money supply. They're talking about a recession for next year. You know, I used to talk to your dad all the time about the flaws of Federal Reserve policy, and we had some great conversations about the need for sound money. But sound money should include a sound budget and a sound fiscal situation, which is lost on the Congress, on the Senate, and the Republicans. That's what drives me crazy. If I had any hair, I'd pull my hair out. I mean, where is the GOP?
You also can't have sound money if you have an insane fiscal policy.
Yes, right.
So the reason we have unsound money is it is what gives the ability of Congress to spend money we don't have and borrow with a limitless, virtually limitless fashion. Congress can borrow and borrow. We've been borrowing for decades, and the Federal Reserve replaces that. But the other thing we've had is this wonderful, great idea, as long as it lasts, we're the reserve currency. So because we buy more than we sell, we export our inflation. Our biggest exporters are dollars, and fortunately they don't come back that quickly. And so we spread our inflation to everybody else like a contagion, and we don't have to suffer the full effects of all the money we create.
Senator Paul, please yell from the rooftops, yell from the scream for I will back you 100%. Actually, as I always have for that matter. We'll try to ride the troops.
Larry.
Senator Rand Paul, fabulous stuff. Really sensible, fabulous stuff.